Hey, how you doing? I'm Duff, and this is my one wheel. And I had been talking about doing something similar to what I did with EUCs, where I gave some basic tips for beginners for riding EUCs, and I thought I would do something similar with the one wheel from the perspective of me being an absolute novice and beginner with any sort of board riding whatsoever. When I was a kid, I had a skateboard that I rode very little. I couldn't do much more than go straight on it. So that was my starting point. Although I am a pretty experienced EUC rider, had no experience with board sports. If you're looking for a how-to video on one wheels from someone that's very experienced from board sports, I suggest that you look up Chris Richardson on YouTube. He's a very experienced skateboarder and also a very accomplished one-wheel rider. He can do things I could only dream about. So yeah, if you're looking for a more advanced and more knowledgeable video on one wheels, I would suggest you check him out. If you want a layman's term, or an explanation of how I learned to ride in layman's terms, at least the things that worked in my head, stay tuned. All right, so you got your one wheel. Now you dropped anywhere from $1,200 to $1,800 depending on what you bought. If you got a Plus or a one wheel XR, this is a one wheel XR right here. But what else do you need before you start riding? Well, if you ask me, you need safety gear. Okay, you need wrist guards, you need a helmet, elbow pads, knee pads. You can't have too much gear in my opinion. If you check out various one-wheel videos, you'll see people that go from fully geared like I am to wearing nothing at all. Now you can see people riding these things barefoot, Which, everyone has their own risk tolerance, but I personally would like to kind of minimize the odds of me getting seriously injured. And without a doubt, you can definitely get seriously injured on a one wheel, or any personal electric vehicle device for that matter. So I would strongly suggest that you invest in some safety gear and wear it. You can spend lots of money in safety gear, but if you're not wearing it consistently, you're not doing yourself any favors. Another thing I would suggest, which I did not have when I first bought my one wheel, is the mud guard. Again, some purists don't like the mud guard. I like it for a couple reasons. When you're riding, it keeps debris from hitting you in the legs, which is annoying. But when I was learning, I had a bunch of spills, and part of those spills was the wheel spinning up and my calves making contact with the spinning rubber, which left various scars on my leg, various brush burns and stuff. So for safety's sake, I think you're better off if you have a mud guard, just my opinion. My wheel also has clear sidebar, or side protectors, I should say. There's like a clear plastic here that you may or may not be able to see. Protects the frame, and I also have what they call float plates installed on the bottom, which kind of helps protect the bottom, and also is used for people that do more tricks because they can actually slide on those plates. But I kind of have them there for protection because I'm not a tricks guy. The thing you're going to want to do is download the One Wheel app for Apple or Android. It's a very critical part of your one-wheel experience. It lets you change the riding modes, and it lets you apply new firmware. You definitely need to get the app. When I said about riding modes, there are a total of, I believe, 6 now, because they've added a custom mode, which I normally ride in. But when you're first learning, I would recommend that you put the wheel in Sequoia. Sequoia is a speed-limited mode. The board does not feel as twitchy in Sequoia. And it's a safer mode to learn in. So I am in Sequoia mode now. All right, so the basics of how the one wheel works. Right here's your power button. You'll have a blue glowing light when it has power. These are sensor pads. There's a pad on either side. The back has no sensors on it. The way it works is these pads sense pressure from your front foot, and if it has pressure on both halves of the sensor pad, it assumes that you are ready to ride, and once you get to the proper point, it will try to balance you. If it loses pressure to these pads, like say if you fall off or whatever, the board or the wheel disengages. So, or at least it's supposed to work that way. Sometimes it's a little problematic. All right, so the first time that you're ready to get on the board, you're going to want to do it next to something that you can hold on to stabilize yourself. because what we have to do first is get the board into the mode where it is actually balancing your body. So you're stepping on with your rear foot. My front foot is going across the sensor pads, both sensor pads, and then as you're holding onto an object, you just kind of tip it up, and you make sure that the board is actually turned on first, and it works a lot better that way. All right, so now have it turned on, put it up, and now you can see the board is balancing me left and right. This is also a good time to start practicing the correct way to disengage the board, which is to relieve the pressure on one of the two sensor pads. The way that I typically do it is I just kind of lift my knee and go forward, and you hear the board click off. That's a skill that seems very easy when you're holding onto a wall. It's not quite as easy in real life, in real practice, because you need to be able to maintain the board more or less still while you're doing that. And you'll find that it takes some practice to be able to disengage cleanly while keeping the board stationary, because as you're doing this, there's a tendency for the board to want to drift on you, and if it drifts more than I think 1 mile an hour, it will not disengage. So you want to spend a lot of time just practicing this, feeling what it is to balance and disengaging. Okay, balance and disengage. And like I said, you're gonna do it first, holding on to something, and then you can try doing it not holding on to something, and just go at your own speed. You know, there's no set rule on how long it should take. All right, my GoPro 7 is acting a little bit flaky. I had a wipeout earlier today. If you look at my recent videos, you'll see it pretty good. And took a shot to the ground, but I'm glad I have my GoPro 3 just in case. So let's continue. All right, you've done your balancing, holding on to something. You have a sense of how you engage those sensors and how you disengage the sensors. Okay, so ideally, I would say that when you're going to start trying to do practice with mounting and dismounting the board without holding on to something, that you do this in grass. With where I'm at right now, I'm better off doing it on the pavement, but I would recommend if you have some flat grass to do this on, it's a safer place to practice this skill. So when you're doing this freestanding, it's the same deal. You know, got pressure on the front plate, and then it's just getting trust in the board to get around level, and then it will start to level you. It's just to get a feel for that, you know. It's an acquired skill. Okay, just raise my heel, and it disengage the board. If I want to go again, I go level. Now a good skill to have, because the heel disengage is not easy, is to also just do this to disengage the board. Just jump off with 2 feet. Okay, that is your emergency dismount. That should always get you out of trouble, and it requires a lot less balancing. Just kind of slow down and hop off. Okay. Need to practice that a lot, because when I was learning, I had some serious falls, and almost all of them, well, actually all of them, involved me stopping. So stopping and starting is something that you need to practice on the one wheel a lot before you go out in public or around obstacles and that kind of stuff. So I recommend that you do some drills, you know, where you're just mounting, you know, maybe rolling a couple feet, and then just trying to stop and dismount, you know. And you can feel and hear when the board dismounts. It clicks, and you know, it no longer balances. So just going to be doing that a lot. Lift the heel. You see now, right there's an example of the trouble you can get in. I lifted my heel, but I did not cleanly disengage, so I just jumped off. Let's try that again. Lift the heel. Okay, turned off. So, you know, even me, who, you know, I've ridden probably coming up on 300 miles on my one-wheel XR, still, if I'm not clean on my technique with dismounting, you can still have issues. So you always need to be ready to just jump off and get the safety. It's not the most graceful thing, but it works. All right, so as far as controlling the board, again, I have an EUC background, so the concept is very similar, where you're just shifting your center of balance basically to control forward and backwards motion. I'm balancing, and then I'm putting a slight amount of pressure on the front of the board. Likewise, if I want to slow down or stop, I'm kind of leaning back on the board a little bit. So it becomes pretty intuitive, even if you're like me and don't have a lot or no board experience. The movement becomes pretty intuitive as far as how to control. And again, you're going to want to be doing this ideally on a soft surface like grass. But if you are on a hard surface like this, wear your protection. And practice a lot. All right, so let's step on, and let's ride around a little bit slowly. Now, when you first get on it, you're gonna feel shaky. It's gonna feel odd, but you will quickly become accustomed. But with the fat tire, you actually have a pretty stable platform to balance on left and right. Feels a little weird for a while, but pretty quickly you will get to trust the wheel to not only balance you but also to stabilize you because you have such a fat tire that you're riding on. Balancing left right on this is definitely easier than what I experienced with an EUC, which only has something equivalent to a bike tire to balance on, as opposed to this, which is a go-kart tire. Okay, so now you can go straight. You can dismount and mount pretty consistently. The next important skill you need to know is how to turn. If you have a snowboarding background or a skateboarding background, this skill will come pretty easily to you. If you don't, like I did, it's going to feel weird. The being in a side position and leaning in, right now this is a toe side turn where I have pressure on my toes, and it leans the tire and it makes me circle. And you can do the same thing heel side. You're just shifting your weight to your heels, and now I'm turning the opposite direction. This takes practice. This takes you learning to trust the board and to trust how it feels. And it's not terrible to do. And if you have any kind of board experience, you'll pick it up much quicker than I did probably. But that's all you're really doing, is you are just shifting your weight to your toes and your heels. You just want to be careful that you don't do it too aggressively, especially if you're just learning, because if you do it too aggressively, it will tip over on you and push out on you. So I would be very subtle with your turning, slight leans, very controlled, very slow, and again, being in this Sequoia mode, drawing a blank, is helpful because it does not lean as much, so it makes it feels a little more controlled when you're doing these turns. So at this point, you want to be doing your practice in wide open spaces with minimal obstacles, if any. You don't want to be doing it around people. You don't want to be doing it around animals. You want to have a large barrier of safety around you as you are training your body to interact with the board, which will become more and more natural with practice. But you don't want to just be able to get on and balance and then I'm gonna go ripping down the sidewalk. I'm gonna be riding around a park with lots of people to show off. I would not recommend you do that. All right, let's practice our stop and dismount. Lift the knee. It did not disengage right away, so you have to just hang in there. It's your initial reaction is going to be to panic, but just kind of regain your balance, keep that heel up, and it should disengage. All right, so like I said, the app is a very important part of your one-wheel experience. There are a total of 6 modes on it, I believe now. Sequoia, like I said, is the beginner mode. which I recommend you start in. Next is cruise, which I believe gives slightly more control over the board, maybe a little bit faster. I've never used cruise really. Mission, which is what a lot of one-wheelers will tell you that they use all the time. And it enables max speed while being best for open road cruising. And then you have elevated mode, where it keeps the board on with a nose up trajectory, which is mostly used for hill climbing. I see very, very few people that actually ever use it. And then you have delirium, which is normally my mode of choice, which unlocks the full acceleration and deceleration potential of the board. Some people don't like it, they think it's a little bit too twitchy, but that's kind of what I prefer. And now Future Motion just released a custom mode, which allows you to tweak settings on the board: carvability, aggressiveness, and board angle. So you can tweak it to your liking. And I have played with that a little bit, but I'm pretty happy just using delirium normally. The app also it keeps track of your mileage, all kinds of stats. So you definitely want to make sure that you get your hands on the app. All right, so let's say that you are now doing the basic riding functions capably. You can stop, you can start, you can turn, and you're ready to ride a little more aggressive, a little faster. You'll put it in one of the modes like Mission, or even eventually Delirium possibly. But you're riding along, and all of a sudden you feel the nose of the board lift up, and you're like, oh, whoa! First time that happens, you're gonna be like, oh, what the hell is that? What's wrong? That function is in the one-wheel world called Pushback, and basically it's a safety feature that Future Motion has on the board, that once you cross between 15 and 16 miles an hour, it's going to start lifting the nose. Even though one wheel officially lists the top speed of the board as 19 miles an hour, once you cross 15, it's going to try to start slowing you down as a safety feature. So as a rider, you have two options. You can acknowledge that feedback and slow down and keep your speed down below where you're feeling that tilt back, or if you're an aggressive rider, you can just lean forward and continue to accelerate, which if you've done any reading in the one wheel community forums, there's a lot of people that do that and take pride in doing that. It's a little different than an EUC. When an EUC starts trying to speed limit you, it usually will do so in two ways. It does have a tilt back mechanism similar to what a one wheel has, but it also has an audio alarm, which normally lets you know when you are using, I think it's pretty standard with all manufacturers, 80% of available power. And the reason that's important is because if you're going much beyond that, the board, not only is the board propelling you forward, but it's also balancing you as well, which uses a degree of power. So what will eventually happen is if you overpower the board beyond its capabilities, its response will be to stop balancing you, and the front end will drop. So depending on how skilled you are, how fast you're going, how lucky you are, you may be able to just kind of run that off when the nose goes down. I've seen some people actually be able to slow down and pull the nose back up, and it starts to balance again. Or you might just eat shit and hit the pavement. And at that time, hopefully you do have on adequate safety gear. There's a big controversy, in the community. Some people hate tilt back. Some people don't mind it. Some people they don't care either way. Me, I appreciate what it does, and I found riding a one wheel, top speed, like cruising real fast, that just isn't what I'm looking for in a one wheel ride. If I'm wanting to go really fast, EUC is a lot better at that in my opinion, and feels more stable. But I have heard cases of people supposedly going 26 and I think even 28 miles an hour. Someone posted once on their one wheel, which is well beyond the posted speed. But if you're going that fast, you have to be okay with the possibility of it cutting out on you. And I'm not okay with that. And my bloody ankle bandage is blowing off from my fall this morning. Thankfully I had safety gear on, but even with the safety gear, I have all kinds of bruises and road rash on my right side. Not a good time. One other thing I should mention with the one wheel is, although it is definitely a rugged device and designed to go off-road, it's designed to be ridden in grass. It's designed to be ridden in trails and stuff like that. If you have the stock slick tire like I do, wet grass is a no-no. It will slide out on you very, very quickly, and I've experienced that myself multiple times. Also, it's ironic that even though Future Motion will show advertisements of guys doing stuff with one wheels that gets them wet, their official stance is you should not be riding these through pedals because they are not watertight, and it's surprisingly easy for water to get in there and possibly cause some damage. So I would not advise riding them in the rain, unless you're okay with voiding your warranty. It seems weird that they don't do a better job waterproofing these things, and there are third-party kits to do that. But yeah, from the factory, one wheel, not very watertight. Alright, so hopefully you found this helpful. If you're a beginner like me and you don't have any prior board sport experience, the one wheel is a great device. It's totally different than the electric unicycles that I've been riding for coming on 3 years, and in a very fun way. A lot of times I have quite a few different electric devices, vehicles, and I would say in the last 6 months, since I've owned this 6-7 months, I've reached for the one wheel more often than anything else. It's just a lot of fun to ride. You don't have to go that fast. It's just a different experience that I really enjoy. So hopefully you found this video helpful. If you just bought a one wheel, if you're considering a one wheel, I would strongly encourage you to do it. You might be able to get a better deal if you get a used one, because they are expensive. But even if I bought mine brand new, even with what I paid, I feel it's worth it. I really, really like the wheel. Alright, so hopefully you found this helpful. Please let me know in the comments below your thoughts on it. And if this is your first time visiting my channel, I have a lot of personal electric vehicle videos along with a lot of other various things. But please let me know what you think in the comments below. If this is your first time visiting this channel, please consider subscribing. And that's all I have for you for now. Basically, one wheel for dummies, and I'm the dummy. So even someone like me, I'm 51 now. I'm 51 and I still was able to pick it up. So I guess old dogs can still learn new tricks once in a while, at least. So please give this video a big thumbs up if you found it interesting, and that's all I have for you for now. Until next time, Duckman out. If you got nothing else out of this video, get out of it that you need to practice the basics. Practice the basics before moving on to more advanced things. Extremely important. And doing it in an area that is safe to do so. Hope you had a great New Year's.